And welcome back to America's Forum. President Obama just signing an executive order today. He says it's part of a push to guarantee equal pay for women. But doesn't the president have some work to do in his own White House staff? And are Democrats just using women to highlight an election year issue? Ahead, we check in with the Republican National Committee to see how they're fighting back. And the fallout continues after the resignation of Mozilla's CEO, as critics say it's all because of a $1,000 contribution supporting traditional marriage in California years ago. Are liberal activists scouring donor databases for high-profile conservative targets and working to destroy them? We'll talk with our legal expert, Michelle Suskauer, about free speech at the executive level.
And speaking of legal, another state legislature voting to decriminalize marijuana. The move to make pot legal is gaining ground, even among conservatives. We'll have a live report from our own Morgan Thompson coming up on America's Forum. And we take note that it is hour 2 on a Tuesday here on America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., let's start with the president and his executive action that he took at the White House just a few moments ago in Washington today. President Obama has just signed those 2 new executive orders to deal with equal pay. But a recent survey found that in the White House itself, women make approximately 91 cents for every dollar that a man makes. Press Secretary Jay Carney answered critics by saying that men and women at the White House in equivalent roles do earn equivalent salaries, and said that the studies, quote, looked at the aggregate of everyone on staff, and that includes from the most junior levels to the most senior levels. He went on to say, quote, when it comes to the bottom line that women who do the same work as men have to be paid the same, there is no question that that is happening here at the White House at every level, Carney said.
Well, that may be what Jay Carney has to say, but you know what's coming up. With the midterm elections, it's time for yet another endeavor in the war on women. Now, for the record, we have no war on women as we take a look at the set right
you are
here
surrounded
today.
by women.
And
They've
we're
got us
darn
surrounded,
happy
JD.
about it. Morgan Thompson, our correspondent, is here. And, of course, it's our friend, our legal analyst, Michelle Suskauer. And Skyping in today, we've got the Deputy Communications Director for the Republican National Committee, Sarah Isgur Flores. Sarah, we welcome you from the RNC in Washington.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Sarah, give us your take on this whole equal pay for equal work thing from the Republican perspective.
Yeah, you bet. So here's the issue with this. There's been a lot of misdirection and misleading information coming out of the White House. They want to use one set of math skills for themselves and one set for when they're trying to bash Republicans. You know, they've disputed the math on the 88 cents that women get paid in the White House for every dollar that a man makes, because they say equal work for equal pay in the White House. But it's the exact same math that they're using to say that women get paid 77 cents on the dollar nationally. The truth is we do have a wage gap, and there is a problem, and we need solutions. But the Paycheck Fairness Act that the Democrats are trying to push will actually cut flexibility for women, particularly working moms, and it'll end merit pay. I don't quite see how that has anything to do with equal pay.
Well, Sarah, if the Democrats are going to hold up what the president signed today, and maybe the Lilly Ledbetter Act as another example, what would you hold up as the example from the Republican side to deal with that issue you just talked about of income inequality?
Well, I think there's a few things we can do. One, we are seeing around the country the private sector really step up and find a way to bring in working moms into the fold, because obviously it's hurting their businesses to not have women at the top levels. I think if you look at Silicon Valley, I think if you look at some of these news organizations even covering this, they have great policies, and we should be looking at those as best practices. I actually think transparency is important. Democrats want to say that their bill is about transparency, but again, it's actually not. The vast majority is for trial lawyers, and it's about making sure that employers can't set wages based on quality of work.
Sarah, I have a question for you. It's Michelle here. You know, certainly I'm a working woman, and, you know, I've experienced this. Do you think that this is really a political hot potato this year, or is it every year? This is something that's been going on year after year after year. It looks like the numbers are increasing. We're moving in the right direction. Certainly the numbers in the White House are higher than the national average. I mean, what's your take on that? Are we moving in the right direction here?
No question we're moving in the right direction, and you can look at the trends over time for that, but we still do have a problem, and I think we do need to address it. You know, obviously, we're both women who are working, and so I think we have every incentive to want to address this. So I think we're talking about the hows and what harm we're going to do. I think ending flexibility is actually the exact wrong thing that we should be looking at. And I think if we looked at some of those best practices around the country, we'd see some really interesting ideas.
So party politics notwithstanding, isn't the issue here in the president's bill about transparency as being a first step towards rectifying the situation? I mean, if I don't know what my fellow male counterparts make, how do I know what I should be making? So I know this is only at the federal level, but I think it's a good first step.
Well, and I think it's important because the White House is trying to conflate the two. The president's executive action today had nothing to do with the bill that he's actually trying to push on the Senate side. So his executive action will actually affect very few women, all things considered, whereas the bill that he's trying to push will, I think, have massive ripple effects across the country in terms of how salaries are set. It means that if me and a male counterpart were both putting in the same number of hours, but I'm just better at my job, then I'm not going to get paid more because it opens up my employer to a lawsuit. And that's going to be really good for trial lawyers and really bad for women. But
Sarah, doesn't this keep the issue on the forefront? This is something that we continue to want to improve on, and is this the right move at the right time? Because this needs to be an issue that, for example, with what we have going on with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, there are so many panels with leaning in and women having a place at the table. Doesn't this sort of dovetail on that so that we continue to move in the right direction for working women across the country, even though it's dealing with a small fraction in terms of federal employees?
I love that we're having this conversation. I read Sheryl Sandberg's book the day it came out, and there's lots of other books. I mean, even Tina Fey's Bossy Pants, I thought was a great read on this. It was. And it was funny. What I think is important, though, to note, I guess, and it's sort of sad, is that Democrats sort of try to beat this drum around an election year when Obamacare is not going well, when the economy is not doing as well as it should, when job creation isn't happening like it should. They fall back on the idea that Republicans don't believe in equal pay, which is absolutely untrue. Of course we do. So demagoguing the issue from the left has been very frustrating for me, just as a woman, but also as a Republican, because I think it is a conversation we should have, and it would be a really productive one to have together. Unfortunately, Harry Reid prefers to just, stand on the Senate floor and say whatever he wants.
So Sarah, what you're telling us, and from my days in D.C., we could call it the D.C. shuffle. You've got the president with an executive order today. The Senate bill is very different. Again, the heavy hand of government command and control, and while atmospherically, the notion that, gee, we're talking about it is a good sign for a lot of people who may pay scant attention to it. You're saying drill a little deeper, take a look at the details, and understand that the appearance and substance are two different things. Again, back to the Senate bill and what's going on with Harry Reid and his minions. Do you expect the Senate bill to move forward, or is this really the one-day political billboard story for the president with his executive order?
Oh, I think it's a billboard story. I think Harry Reid hopes that this will help some of his vulnerable Democrats. It's not looking like they're going to hold the Senate. He's getting really nervous that he's going to lose his position, and he's trying to do whatever he can. It's getting a little desperate on a lot of fronts, and this is just one of them. I do hope that we use this as a jumping off point. The House passed a great workplace flexibility bill a couple months ago. I hope Harry Reid will consider taking that up. I just think it's unbelievably important to give women the flexibility to both maintain their careers and be great moms. That's the conversation we're having as a country. That's what Sheryl Sandberg's talking about and Tina Fey. I'm not a mom yet, but that's a conversation that even not moms are having. So I hope that he'll look at that bill. I think it's a great bill that the House passed, but so far Harry Reid's just been sitting on it.
So the issue is not just equal pay, it's also, you know, maternity leaves. We talked about the paternity last week with the baseball, which was an interesting story. So it's not just equal pay per se, it's also, you know, those rights to have the time to be a mother, to be a wife, all of these issues, not just salary per se.
Exactly. And I think both are important. We need to close the pay gap. We need to allow women to have careers and be moms. There's a lot we need to do for women in this country. But for the last 5 years since the president's been in the White House, the number of women in poverty has actually increased. So having more women below the poverty line is the wrong direction. And I think we need to be doing more on all of these fronts. But today's bill isn't the answer.
We'll have to leave it right there. Sarah Isgur Flores, Deputy Communications Director of the Republican National Committee. We appreciate your perspective today. And when we come back, another issue in the workplace. Since when does your private political donation become a grounds for termination? We'll talk about that as we continue here on America's Forum. You can weigh in a variety of social media where you can contact us. Please stay tuned.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger.